Hi folks, I've got big news that affects everybody watching this video right now, and it's about the scope attachments in Warzone. I was doing a deep dive into weapon testing for a Season 5 loadout video when I noticed not one, not two, but three major problems with the scope attachments. That might mean that some of your long range shots, sniping in particular, might be feeling less consistent than you would like. In today's video, I'll be covering all three of these issues and how you can avoid them until hopefully they're fixed by the developers. We're not new to issues with sights on guns. This has happened lots of times before, but it's normally been isolated incidents that have been fixed quite quickly. What I've stumbled across affects lots of sights and loads of guns. It's very possible that it might be affecting the loadout you're using right now. So first off, let's just get a couple of things established that's going to help explain what the actual issues are. Some sights are aligned on all guns. You're thinking, well, duh, that should obviously be the case. This might sound silly, but by the end of this, you're not going to be taking any of this for granted. Here we are. This is what the sight should look like. Red dot in the middle of the crosshair. It moves around as we move the sight, tracking around, up and down, left and right. It stays dead center. We switch from our MCW 6.8 to our KVD Enforcer, exactly the same. So this is an example of what I would determine a good sight. However, what is a bad sight? We've now got the SPX 80x6 sniper scope. It's one of the most popular scopes in the game. And if we look down sight now, let's take a look at that red dot. It's not centered, is it? You're thinking, well, is that just the laser? I'll tell you now, I've done a load of testing. I'll hopefully get a bit of B-roll up on screen to show you how that panned out, some of it. But for the purposes of this video, just understand that the rounds go, at this distance at least, where the red dot is. I've put the laser on just to show where the actual fall of shot is. If you imagine we're at a certain distance where each of these black dots represents somebody's head, and you aim on them like this, the red dot was outside of the black circle. So therefore, you could have completely missed that shot. Again, I'll just show you again. See? Crosshair, dead centered, but the laser is completely out of it. So if you're aiming for headshots at a certain distance, you're going to be missing. So this is what I would determine a bad scope. Okay, so you've got bad scopes that just don't work. No, it's not as simple as that, unfortunately. You have bad scopes that affect vulnerable guns, let's call them. There are some guns that are more immune. So the MCW 6.8 is immune. Same sight here, SPX 80, switch back to the KVD Enforcer, a vulnerable gun, and then, as you can see, misaligned. So bad scope on an immune gun makes no difference. Bad scope on a vulnerable gun, it causes a misalignment. I found a good handful of sights that I would classify as bad sights, and just through a little bit of testing, I found loads of guns that I found to be vulnerable to this. So if you were to test all the guns, I would expect there's a ridiculous number of combination of sights and weapons that could have this misalignment. It might even be the gun that you're using right now. So takeaway point one is that some sights on some guns are not properly lined up. So moving on to point two, and that is a horrible parallax issue with many of the scopes on a Kar 98. If you're not familiar with that term, don't worry, a picture paints 1,000 words. I'll show you now exactly what that means. As we can see, the laser where the rounds are actually going to go is offset from the main crosshair. We were expecting that with one of these bad sights, but the difference now is instead of it being anchored to the same point offset, it moves around. So not only is it offset, it now wibble wobbles. The red dot goes ahead of the direction of travel. So the red dot goes faster than the actual crosshairs itself. And the faster you switch your aim up, the worse this effect becomes. Just imagine a scenario where you're trying to fast aim or snap onto them even. This red dot could accelerate so far ahead that it essentially goes like a full head width ahead of where you're going. Kar 98, most of the scopes, absolute bobbins. Like, how are you supposed to aim with that? Don't know. If you've been feeling inconsistency, feel better about it, it might not necessarily have been your duff aiming. So moving on to our last issue, which is the worst, but fortunately is the most limited because it just affects one sight only. And that's to do with our AOK 4x RQ9 recon sight. And this performs only worse than it has been named. Not too bad there. That looks all right with the MCW until we start aiming, we start moving around. So this is the exact same issue that the car has, but this is far more pronounced. So if you were struggling a little bit to see, just imagine this is what was happening on the car. And this is the MCW. So the MCW is one of the more stable guns. If we switch this over to the car, you sat down, ready for a laugh, whatever, or a cry. Look at that. So I just remind you, the red dot is just there like for aesthetic. It's an attachment that helps the gun out, but you don't use the red dot for aiming. You use your sight for aiming. The red dot here is purely to demonstrate how badly the actual point of aim is moving around, despite the fact that the sight is only moving like fairly mellow. You've got absolutely no chance of hitting a target with this sight unless you've got a laser fitted. And even if you've got a laser fitted, let's face it, it's like Mr. Miyagi trying to catch a fly around a room. We move back here. Just to really bring home the effects of that, just remember that the red dot is where the bullet's going. Shoot with the red dot and look where the chevron is. Nowhere near it. I'm now going to aim with the chevron instead of the red dot. And look how far off it is. So that sight is absolutely... Stick it in a bin, don't touch it until the developers come out and say something significant's happened to that site. So there are 3 issues, but what can you do about it? You've got about 3 options. 1, do absolutely nothing. You can't be bothered, you're too good or you're too bad. Stick with what you've got, it doesn't matter to you. Fair enough, that's your prerogative. Option 2, you can head off into the range like I've done. You can test out your preferred weapon. You can see if it's affected or not through your own testing. And then if you find it is affected, you can then come up with a combination that works for you, an optimum loadout, blah, 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 blah. Go through all that work, get the rewards for it. Fair enough. Or option 3, you can follow my loadout video up here that I've just produced, and that is for all the loadouts for Season 5. In that, I give you every kind of loadout you could possibly want in Season 5, and none of them are affected by that issue. So share this with your pals, make sure none of you become a victim of this thing. Let's get this out to the developers, let's let them see what's going on, and hopefully they can do a fix, and we can get back to doing some fun sniping with the Kar 98. I hope you found this useful. I'll catch you next time.